fisherman's post. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast series. This episode is titled The Cobia Run out of Oregon Inlet. I'm going to be talking with Bill Gorham of Bowed Up Lures out there on the Outer Banks, Southern Shores. We're going to be talking about when to start fishing, when to start looking, sight casting tips. Then we're going to go to the tried and true chumming tactics. And we're going to finish up with a little conversation about how Bowed Up Lures came about. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and here in our latest and greatest effort, the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast series. And it is in this series where we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast, ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. And in this pursuit, on this creative project, I am joined every week by Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Billy, welcome to a show talking about one of my favorite species, man, chasing cobia.
Hey, what's up, Gary? Yeah, man. I'm pretty excited, even though I've never caught a cobia. So I have a lot to learn. I don't even know if I've been cobia fishing. I think I've been on the boat before, and they're like, "Look out for a floating thing," and
something brown.
Something brown. I won't say what they said. It looks like floating in the water, but you guys can imagine something brown floating. Anyway, I'm going to come off the bad jokes. But yeah, man, I'm excited to learn more. And I've heard a lot about Bowed Up Lures. So I'm excited to get to know the people behind the curtain and get to know about their business and learn how to cobia fish. So maybe when I get back to North Carolina, I can go on someone's boat with you, Gary, and someone can hook one and hand me the rod.
Just stay out of my way, man. Just stay away from the bow of the boat and stay out of my way.
Yeah, that's a whole episode we should do. Like, we just interview people who's been on the boat with Gary and what a savage this guy is to fish with. That's what we should. That's a good episode. I'm gonna write that one down. That'll be a special one.
A selfish angler.
Selfish.
My boat. I'll beat you to the rod every time.
Wait, whose name's on the Fisherman's Post? That's mine. Give me that rod.
Maybe I cannot confirm nor deny that accusation.
I can confirm all day. All right. And I can also confirm that we have some awesome sponsors sponsoring the show. So we'll get right into it. We got Bland Landscaping Company. These guys are great. They have a great business, landscaping business, been around since 1976. A great company to work for. And they're all over the state of North Carolina. And they've reached out to us and said, hey, we're listeners of the show, big fans of it, and want your community to come over and be a part of our community, come and be a part of our workplace. So this is Bland Landscaping, and they are looking for people to come on, be a part of their team. And as I always say, they want, get up early, go to work early, get off early, and go get on the boat and go do some fishing. So really cool company, really cool guys. So go over there if you're looking for a new career opportunity. And then, so that's it. And if you want to, Gary, if you want them to come over your yard and do some landscaping, I'm sure they can do that as well.
I would love that, man. I mean, what do you want to do? You want to go fishing? Or you want to work in the yard? Like, I'll bring them over to work in the yard. That sounds perfect.
Yeah. And I think they can do like big stuff, like build a tunnel in your yard or something if you wanted. So
all right.
Something crazy.
Anyway, all right. Well, let me think on
it. Yeah. Kids, you want a tunnel right to the water? We can slide. We can do that. All right. And then next up, we got Marine Warehouse Center. Been with us for over 100 episodes, I believe, and really appreciate those guys. Got a quick message from them, and we'll be right back.
In Warehouse, we have everything. We have new boats, we have parts, we have accessories, new trailers, we have a complete service department with highly trained technicians. Anything you need to get out on the water, we have it.
At Marine Warehouse Center, as we've grown over the last few years, now have a large section of marine supplies from start to finish for all your boating needs.
What I love about this region is to be able to get out on the water, and also we love to be able to get you out on the water.
The best part of working at Marine Warehouse is being able to get involved with the customers and share a love for the water.
And they have awesome hats.
They do. The patch hat, the camo, they're stylish, man. They know what's hip.
They know what's up. So go over there, support those guys. Even if you go in, buy a t-shirt, buy a hat, long sleeve, whatever you need for the water. But then buy a boat. And just tell your wife, hey, I'm going to buy a hat from Marine Warehouse. Pick up a hat, buy a boat and just say just lie to her. Just say they gave it to you.
To say, honey,
It'll
you know
work.
that podcast I love? Well, I want to show my appreciation by going to one of their biggest sponsor and buying a boat because I love the podcast that much. I'm going to go buy a boat.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Like, no, honey, the hat. I swear the hat was 20, or the hat was 60 grand. The boat that was $20. Like, promise. I bought the hat, not the boat. Anyway.
Well, Terrell there, I mean, they're busy, and as they're getting ready for the new season, Terrell might be so busy. I'm not sure. He may have told me this one before. I feel like I've heard it before. If not from Terrell, I've heard it from someone. You might have a better memory than me, but are you ready for Terrell's joke? Again, Terrell's joke, not mine.
Sure, I'm ready for it.
How much does it cost a pirate to pierce his ears?
I don't know.
A buccaneer.
Okay, that's pretty funny. That one's pretty funny. You've not told that one, or Terrell has not told that one.
Terrell
Terrell
has not told that one.
He's a good comedian.
Buccaneer.
Terrell is really good at this.
So, Billy, I think we have a cobia fish photo, and I am hot for cobia fishing. Ready to talk to Bill. Show me a cobia fish photo, please.
All right, here we go. We got Peter Paris from Fayetteville with a 47-inch cobia he pulled in at the Mason Bro Jetty using dead bait on a drum rig. He was fishing with his dad, Nick Paris, right there on the right. So we got Peter on the left holding the fish, his dad on the right. That fish was so long I couldn't even get it all in the photo. I had to crop him out a little bit.
I need to do a photo podcast. I need to tell them people hold it horizontal, man. What are you doing with that vertical fish being cropped out? When's my podcast? When's my fish photo podcast?
Yeah, right. That's what we do. Just go through photos and critique how they hold their fish.
I'm going to channel Beavis and Butthead for that one when I'm critiquing people holding their fish.
Oh, man.
Well, look, we are going to come back to you for Billy's best takeaway after my conversation with Bill. And again, we're not going to continue to do this, but a quick reminder, weekly fishing reports via Fisherman's Post. If you've wished for more current information, Fisherman's Post has the answer in 2022, online only. So not in print version. That's still a monthly paper. Online, audio and video delivery, inshore only, behind a paid wall, charter memberships available, reasonable cost after that. So go online, fishermanspost.com, and check it out. But right now, I'm excited to talk cobia with Bill of Boat Up Lures, Billy, so stay tuned. All right, Bill Gorham, Boat Up Lures. Man, pleasure to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Say get boat up or get showed up.
I like it, man. I do like it. I like the name. I like the product. I have caught a cobia on a Boat Up bucktail before. But even with that, though, no one gets on the show without answering two questions. Are you ready for your two questions, sir?
Absolutely.
Question number one, why should we listen to anything you have to say about a cobia?
You probably shouldn't. No, I'm joking. This will be my 15th year fishing for cobia. Chased them from Hatteras all the way up to Chesapeake Bay. We actually look to go a little bit further north this year as the stock expands. This will be my 8th year of making cobia bucktails and in the fishing industry. And hopefully can provide a little bit of insight, a little rationale why cobia fishing, or why I love it and why many others end up falling in love with it. And maybe you can book a charter or run out with your own boat and get boat up on a nice cobia.
All right, man. That is an acceptable answer to question number two. Question number one. For question number two, as tradition goes, a non-fishing related question. I had to work for this one. I got to come up with this is a little bit of a setup. Boat up. I like it. A phrase sometimes used for people who are puffed up before fighting. And when I think of fighting, I went to Muhammad Ali. So this is your trivia question about Muhammad Ali. Do you know what incident happened when he was 12 years old that set him on a path of boxing?
He got beat up.
Close. That's a good guess, but it's close. Man, someone stole his bike. And he was telling the officer, someone stole my bike. He's like, man, you got to learn how to fight. I happen to be a boxing trainer. Come on down to the gym. And that was the start of Muhammad Ali's boxing career.
A true legend.
A true legend. All right, man. So with Cobia, and everyone anticipates it, everyone is on social media waiting for some photos, waiting for some reports. I don't want to wait on social media. I want you to help me out, man. You're up there in Oregon Inlet. What gets you? What gets you in the know that you're thinking, man, it's time to start hunting?
I'll tell you, historically, we used to look at the water temperature map, and we'd look at that hard break of about 68 degrees. The more recent years, probably the past 5 years, anything in the 60s, 61, 62. But really, what is one of the best indicators is, say, if the Spanish are skying, get the eye in. There's cobia around. For whatever reason, those two species seem to move together. But it's ultimately that temperature. There's some indications of cow nose rays. Usually, when you see them show up passing by the piers, seeing them on social media, all around the docks, moving through the inlets along the coast, those cobia are soon to be following. Um, so that's really the time. Again, it used to be mid-May. Anymore, we're seeing them show up in late April, mid-April. I had a guy that shot one year that caught one, and he was drum fishing in March and caught one at the point. So really, it's temperature driven, but also some correlations with other species that you see that lets you know it's time to get up in that tower or set up that chum bucket and go after them.
So, man, I guess I'm guilty of not really knowing the habit. Are we talking about migrating from south to north? Is that what's happening in this time period? And is it just instinctual? Are they chasing bait, or is it just chasing water temp?
Well, we've actually helped write grants for several studies, and there's clear that there is an east-west migration to where there's a group or stock of fish that winter right on the drop off the coast of Hatteras all the way down to Wilmington. Then they'll move west, which is into the beach, and then up into the Chesapeake Bay and further. And then there's other evidence of fish that will migrate along the beach north and south. Um, and it's mostly down to that Jacksonville area. And some of them hit that shelf offshore and they ride it all the way down to Florida. So it's a little bit of both, but there's definitely a lot of east west migration.
Do you know what causes that migration? Like, again, what inside them pushes them to make that journey?
Really, it seems like temperature, but also migratory patterns of other species. Um, in the Chesapeake Bay, a lot of what we end up fishing on towards the end of the season is those cow nose rays, and they stack up real thick. And as they tend to move off, those fish are following them. But overall, the big push seems to be temperature.
Okay. Well, man, so as far as the timing goes, we got the temperature, we've got some confidence. And so I like how we're starting with sight casting because I think that's where people's heart lies, even though chumming can easily outproduce, but sight casting is sort of the affinity, the love affair. So if I'm on a boat with you, you've got confidence and we're headed out of Oregon Inlet, what's your plan, man? Is it only to look? Do you have a destination in mind? Like, how do you approach that day?
Well, it's usually to follow old Daniel DOA wherever he goes in his prop wash. No, there's if you can find a hard temperature change, it's really good because what you'll actually have is that warm water will go up above the cold water, and cobia don't have a swim bladder, so that's why also you'll find them on tide changes or inlet changes, where there's two competing currents or water temperatures will actually create what we call a rip or wakey water, where that water is rising up to the top, and that's where those fish will be. That's why a lot of us believe that we see them on top in the spring, but we don't see them on top in the fall when they're heading back down. Um, so there's some structure areas. There seems to be some aggregate areas, and it's probably with some hard bottom um, that they tend to go to. Um, I'm a little hesitant to give locations
Oh
because
yeah, it wasn't fishing for locations, so I should have been
it's
clear about that.
but anymore you'll see the boats, so it's not difficult. But really, you can't go wrong on a tide change, the inlet change, where you have real muddy water going to the clear ocean water, um, and then where there used to be an inlet, we call it the Lego Bridge, or formerly the Lego Bridge. There seems to be aggregation there. There's some humps off Road Anthe, and even changes to the bottom where it may be 50 foot and then jump up to 30 feet. It seems like those fish hit that change, they start heading up and they look up and they just keep going up, um, which is really interesting. Um, and that's what's really cool about this fish. It's the perfect mixture between hunting and fishing, because you're up in pretty much a tree stand that's on a boat or a tower, and you're just looking, and you see so many different things. You see so much aquatic life, from sea turtles, porpoises, and then boom, you'll see, sometimes a pack of cobia, sometimes a single. And during that spring run, the really awesome part about it is you can see schools of 100, 200 cobia. That could be anywhere from 15 pounds to 60, 80 pounds. Um, Aaron Kelly, who's one heck of a cobia fisherman, probably one of, if not the best on the East Coast, is out of Oregon Inlet. And I've got to fish in his prop wash quite a bit. Yeah, but he knows where the big ones are at, and it's been a fishery that I've definitely fallen in love with. I know a lot of other people have enjoyed it, and it's a little change of pace. You know, you don't have to worry about trolling gear. You don't have to worry about bouncing on the bottom or changing out your bait. You can really just hit it 4 or 5 knots, or you can go 10 knots, however fast you want to go, and just look around. And when you see a fish, you cast a lure or a live bait, even though we're a little anti live bait only because of bitterness. But if it needs a heartbeat to bite, give them an eel or a spot or a croaker, and you get to see the fish um, bite the lure, and we call it entice the bite. So there's different ways to get the fish to finally bite the lure, because sometimes they'll just follow the lure all the way up to the boat. And that's my favorite way of fishing, is sight casting, whether it be weed lines for little dolphin or bass fishing along the bank. Um, and the other great thing about cobia and what makes it appealing to so many people is that they're hard fighting fish. They range in size and they're great tasting. And the biggest plus is too that they have a very low release mortality, um, which is great. So you're not causing any damage to the stock.
So, man, as far as sight casting goes, and out there, Oregon Inlet Way, wind is a fact of life. So, as far as conditions go, like, when is it just too much? Like, when is it like, man, sight casting isn't going to happen, whether it's too much wind or not enough sun? Like, what's the threshold?
I'll tell you that it's changed so much. I never would have thought of going out on a cloudy day or a real windy day, except for the past 3 years, we've had it's almost like a nor'easter hit. Um, Not saying that you can fish in a true nor'easter, but we've had a lot of rainy weather. And if you're going to go out when it's cloudy, it needs to be pure clouds. Um, Otherwise, you're going to get glared out. So if there's a lot of sun shining through the clouds, so they're not real thick, not dark. It's hard. And then also the type of water that you're fishing in. If it's clear water, you can kind of get away without the sunlight. But then the wind factor, if you're looking at, well, I fished in really, really windy, and it's been good, but it's not the most enjoyable way to fish for them. So up here on the called northern beaches above the point there in Hatteras, you get the southeast to actually southwest winds, or a true west wind, it'll create a little bit of a water temperature break and also bring up those bottom dwelling fish, which again, cobia is primarily fish, lives on the bottom, doesn't fish on the bottom, it is fish. Um, so, and also those rays that southern rays that they'll migrate with up and um, so they'll get them along the beach and it usually brings in the fat back or bunker when you have those type of winds. A northeast wind, it tends to push the fish down. Um, you can, I've definitely had less success. There's a lot of people think that it pushes that warm water in when you have an east or northeast, the southeast wind, but it's a bit more challenging to fish for 'em, when there's not some type of break, whether it be water temperature um, or just a tide break. And when you have those type of winds, it kind of breaks all of that up and spreads them out.
So, man, I follow all that. And if I'm, again, I guess I'll just use this sort of analogy. Like if I'm on your boat, I'm guessing you're up in the tower. Maybe you got me up in the bow of the boat. What's the speed that you like to sort of when you're in a searching mode? When you got confidence that fish are going to be in the area, how does that work out, man? Four to
One, one,
five? Is that what you said?
1 or 2 knots. I go as slow as I can go. Um, I've always felt comfortable, especially if you have a feeling or you're on a particular bottom. If you've seen a fish, um, a lot of times, if it's a slow day, we'll get up on plane, and as soon as we run over a fish, we're going to work that area. Normally, that time of year, when you see a fish, there's other fish there, and you can just work that area. And there's really not a terrible rush, especially if you're seeing a fish here or there. Sometimes it's just a matter of them rising up and you being at the right place at the right time to where if you're going too fast, your motor's sounding off. Um, you, you think you're covering more ground, but are you really covering it if you can't see it and study it? And that it also has to do with the amount of sun, how clear the water is. Is there any type of wave actions where you can see those fish in the waves? If it's flat calm, you almost have to be a couple boat lengths away from them to see them. And if you're going too fast, you're going to run right over them. And then if you're working pods of menhaden, sometimes we've sat and just floated along with the school. And every now and then a fish will rise up from right underneath of it to where if you were working it too hard, you would have gone right past them, never known they were there.
And then, so do you usually orchestrate the boat with, say, you or someone in the tower and then someone in the bow of the boat?
My biggest thing is try to fish with people or get an agreement. One person is going to drive the boat, the other person's going to cast. A lot of times, what you'll do is if the fish is on your side, the other guy's taking the wheel, and vice versa. And then your whole job, the person that's driving the boat, is keep that boat in the best position for that angler to catch the fish. Because sometimes it may take 2 or 3 casts. Your first cast may not be the best. To where if everybody in the boat's throwing, or the 2 people up top are throwing, nobody's driving the boat, and the boat ends up going past the fish, or the fish changes direction, and then you got to wait to reel in, and then you're not looking at where the fish is going, and then you lose the fish. So really the most effective way is you have one person driving the boat, positioning the boat, and the other person, or 2 people if there's one down the bottom, in the bow, casting and keeping eyes on the fish.
And then what do you have in my hands up there in the bow? Like, again, if I'm on your boat, I guess a little bit question rod and reel, but more terminal tackle. Like what you, I mean, I know it's going to be a boat up lure, but walk me through the setup.
I personally fish with the 5500 spin fisher. Um, Depending on how many times I'm going to go, it'll be between 30 and 40 pound braid. And then it's going to be to 120 pound swivel, then to an 80 pound leader. And that 80 pound leader is going to allow me to, if I need to grab the leader and either gaff the fish or net the fish. And also any rubbing on the rails or gaffs, when they're flopping around the boat or in the fish box. 80 pound is a strong Pound test, it's not too heavy, it's not too light. And the same thing goes with the 30 to 40 pound braid. I know the old school way used to be a nice old ugly stick, a BG 45, and 80-pound braid, and horse them in. And it kind of depends upon your setup too on your boat, what you feel comfortable with. If you have to, the larger boats, they may want to get the fish in faster. They may be rubbing up on the rails a lot more, so they'll go with a stronger pound test. But if you're in the center console, that the safest is that 40-pound braid to a swivel to an 80-pound leader, and you go medium heavy. I like having a little bit fast action tip, but the rod has to have some backbone because again, they are good fighting fish, and you're gonna have to walk them into the boat to either net them or gaff them.
So, man, and when you're talking about 80-pound is good size leader to grab, are we talking about a pretty long leader then? You like?
I usually go with about 16 inches, sometimes 12. Um, and I usually start out at 16 because if I have to trade out a bucktail, because again, you catch a big fish, they're going to tear up your bucktail. Um, we used to in the before we started making them, they were made with original jig hooks, and they're usually good for about one fish, and then you had to trade them out or bend the hook back straight. Um, but that 16 inches is about where you need to be. They don't seem to be very leader shy, especially in the spring of the year. So there's no huge need. If you feel like for some reason they're getting a little spookish, been thrown on a lot, you can always go lighter and even shorten up the leader a little bit or make it a little bit longer. Or if you feel real comfortable tying leader to braid, um, the one thing I hope you feel real comfortable doing it because at the end of the day, they're going to put a lot of pressure on it, and it's still leader against braid.
All right, man. So I'm talking to Boat Up. So talk to me about the bucktail, man. Talk to me about what's tied on the end, because I'm guessing like other people watch and listen to this podcast, man. We've been to the tackle shop. We've seen the array of like specialty bucktails, like for lack of a better word, like the days of the $4 bucktail are long gone. Like we're spending a lot of money and they look pretty, man. They look like works of art. And I know there's a functionality to it. So like for you, man, what goes into the decision about size? What goes into the decision of color, feather or plastic, or walk me through it, man. Give me some insight.
So the first bucktail I ever tied, I used 80-pound braid as thread. I tied it in my hand. I got some Mylar from Bass Pro Shops and put the whole package on. It was a brown top with an orange belly, squid head, and I was fishing with a good buddy, Casey Russell, who's a charter captain now in Florida, and Matt Anderson, who still charters here in the Outer Banks. And Casey said, "You're gonna catch a fish with that one." And I thought, yeah, it'd probably fall apart. But we were working the inlet change, and he threw an eel at a nice 50. What ended up being a 55-pound fish. And Matt threw another store bought big eye, and I tossed my homemade bucktail, and the fish was hooked, and so was I on making cobia jigs. And I think it was a competitive thing, trying to find something different, make it different. We tried different powder paints. Some of our blends are custom blended here, mixing two different paints and measurements of paint. We put holographic glitter in them. A lot of them we also airbrush. One of our most popular is our natural color, which is again, custom blended brown. And we go and buy the very expensive holographic top coat. So it's not just brown. There's a different look to it. We hand dot all the dots. And we started making that one because I was actually watching rockfish at the fishing pier one day, and they wouldn't hit anything. And we started noticing they were actually chasing flounder. So I was hell bent on making a flounder imitating bucktail. Never thinking with all the bright color cobia jigs that are brown and white, would actually be the most popular, but it has taken off. Um, but going down to the thread, um, we use the flat wax thread, so the wraps look real pretty. And the one thing people really like is to have a lot of flare, so it's very full, which really sets any lure apart. Is how much material you're putting in it per lure. Um, we're always happy to break down how much material we put in each bucktail, the quality of paint, the baking process to make it as tough and long lasting as possible, or the airbrushing that we do on them, and then just the wraps themselves. Um, we it's a more detailed process. It's not just slapping on deer hair. There's many times that I'm taking really really small pinches of hair and spreading it out all the way around the lure over a base coated color to give it a blended color, so it has a different effect and pattern. And then we've always stuck with the feathers, as the trailers, because just to me it was natural. They're beautiful in the water. Um, there's some drawbacks to using plastics. When you're throwing a lure, sometimes it'll wrap around and get over the hook. And then we try to put as much flash into it and appeal. And when you have those feathers as a trailer, a wide flare in the hair, a full jig, it's just a beautiful thing in the water. And as my wife would tell me, you spend entirely too much time on each one. And I'm committed to never sell a lure that I wouldn't fish myself. And there's buckets full of ones that just didn't come out right. And then even looking at this year, you talk about the price of them. Probably go ahead and say we've been blessed to work with other manufacturers that helped us source cheaper material as far as price. Still same bucktail, just getting it at a cheaper price, or getting hooks in bulk at a better deal. That actually allowed me to put more time on the vise, to give a really unique product. And this year, that has definitely changed to where the cost of materials and components and availability of it, um, it's making it hard. We're going to keep pushing on for, again, I think this 8th year. And we've got some new paint colors out that are really cool effect. To where even if you don't catch a Cobia on it, like the guys down in the Panhandle, they just, or even up here in the Outer Banks on the piers, you're going to have a cool looking bucktail that's going to turn heads, and it's effective.
Man, that was just what I was looking for. I was looking to understand more about the bucktail that's tied onto the end. So now to go back to the fishing practice, man. So we have a fishing site, and this is one of the questions I always I definitely want to ask, and, don't know how I feel. But if we see our fish and it's moving, left to right or however it's moving, man, what's the ideal cast? Is it beyond the fish? Is it as close, in front of the fish? Like, if you could coach me and get me to cast just the way you want me to, what's that instruction like?
I tell you, I've fished with Bill Hogan for many years, who taught me many tips and tricks. So when you throw, the one of the most important things is not to have a big bow in your line. When you're throwing and you let it out, we actually throw right to the fish, and we'll close the bail to where that lure is falling with minimal slack in our line. The first landing point I personally like is 3 feet in front and 3 feet on the other side of it. So that way that bucktail is landing in the water and it's coming right across its face. And I like to throw as far away as I can, but also be accurate, because that'll give me the most distance to work that fish and what will entice a bite. Does he like it slow and methodical? Does he want it ripping? Do I have to open the bail, drop it down for a second, jig it up, open, jig it up, open, jig it up, to get it to finally eat. And, and each fish can be very different, whether it be fast or slow. Some of the old tricks of, you throw it out and you'll jig it and then open the bail and let it fall. Um, Me personally, yeah, if I want to see the fish and I want to work that lure all the way back to the boat as if that fish was following it. And again, part of that trick is having somebody that's driving the boat, that's positioning the boat to allow you to work the lure. But absolutely, as far as the casting on the fish, if you can get 3 feet in front of it, 3 feet on the other side, I've always felt that's a safe distance where you're not going to scare the fish. It's going to give you ample time to bring it across its face. Um, and one of the methods of, you know, jig, jig, reel, and some of them just like it to be ripped right across their face, and they turn and eat it and pile in on it. Um, and then there's, on occasion, if you've thrown out a fish a couple times, sometimes you just put it right on their nose, and they bite it just because they're angry at it. Um, my experience, personal experience, that if you throw the lure way out in front of the fish and you give them the opportunity to study it, um, they're less likely to eat it. So you're really going for that reaction strike. Um, so in the water, across its face, let him eat it, get on it.
And then I guess what you're saying too is like with accuracy in mind, you like a long cast. So you want that distance from the boat, because not so much to scare the fish, the boat, but it gives you more water to work the bucktail to success.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I follow that. Well, man, I know we want to talk about chumming a little bit, but I'm enjoying this conversation. I got one more question about the bucktail, and people ask me to ask this question more when I run into them. Man, what knot are you using to tie that bucktail to the leader? Are you tying like a loop knot so that it has action? Or are you tying it tight because we're talking about a hard fighting fish?
I do a clinch knot, and I try to do it to the front of the eyelet of the jig, so that when I'm throwing the lure, it's going, head in and head up, and it's doing this action. To where if you tie it and clinch it real tight to the top, it has more of a shaky action to it. I know we're doing hand gestures here, but uh, there's a few people that I see that would do the loop. But when you're dealing with a 2-ounce bucktail, you're on a boat, the fish is moving, you're moving. You're going to get that action, and that's why we have about 12 different head styles, to fit how different people like to fish. Their squid heads still kind of zigzag a little bit. Our big eyes, we have custom molds for that one, that gives it a little more bouncing action. Our octo heads, they do the same effect, of having more of a pulsating action, to get that fish to bite. Then we have what we call the mega ziggy, which is, obviously, it's not a lot like, but has that same slant as a gotcha head, and you can work that like a jerk jigger, where it will zigzag back and forth, which is a fun lure, and that may be one that you might want to put a loop knot on it. But that clinch knot has been tried, true, and tested for me personally, and that's what I would tell people to do.
All right, man. We could easily just keep talking about sight casting, but since we teased up chumming in the beginning, we want to do what we said we're going to do. So shift this conversation to chumming, man. Now I'm headed out of Oregon Inlet, or I'm in Oregon Inlet. I mean, I'm not sure what we're talking about. Tell me about chumming up your way.
Well, I tell you, if you got a chum, just quit. No, I'm kidding. Um, I tell you, chumming, especially on those days where it's just the fish are around and you've seen them on the bottom machine, or it's just too cloudy, or it's early in the day. And really, we do a lot in the bay, but I've seen it very effective down at the point at Hatteras. But even some of those areas around Rodanthe are structures. You get your chum bucket with some weight in it, and you put that at the stern. Then you get your chum bag, you put that on the bow to where you're going up and down, and that's getting a good slick. But it's definitely important, I feel, to have a bucket down at depth for those fish that are down below, and then you get one up top. Um, and then really, what we have done or try to do is, 2 to 3 rods, 1 or 2 with either an eel or a croaker, um, and you can put them on the bottom, or you try to have it stacked to get those fish at different levels. And then always have a bucktail ready or a live bait ready, because sometimes those fish will just come right up to the boat down an oil slick, and just hold on. I know there in Hatteras, in the middle of the summer, there's a very effective bottom fishing chubbing fishery. There's not very many that try it in that Green Island slough, but I can only imagine with the amount of fish that we've seen the past few years, and even marking them on the bottom, that it would not work. Um, but again, around the inlet structures, um, I know down in the southern part of the state, they like going down to the point or the seawall, um, and that's those fish seem to like to hang around, especially if they're not migrating. They're hanging around something, whether it be buoys, ARs, shipwrecks, inlet changes, wherever they can hang out and eat and spawn, or just moving around with rays or sea turtles.
So in these some of these locales you're talking about, again, more your backyard, whether it's Hatteras or off Rodanthe or in the bay, with something chumming down low and chumming the surface. What are we talking about, man? Like we're talking about like 20 feet of water, 30 feet of water?
Normally, yeah, about 20 feet. I like, there's different depths, 32 feet. You get down around 50, 60 feet. That's a pretty long chum bag, and a lot of water to try to cover with a slick. Um, so me personally, I try to keep it in shallow, 30 and below. Sometimes 40, but also if you can find a ridge, like we were talking about before, that may go from 50 feet to 30 feet. Fishing, setting up inside that 30, getting that chum working. So if that fish comes up that ridge, he'll get that scent trail and start working towards your chum line and your bait. But it's normally shallower.
And then you already basically talked about it, but I'm just going to circle back and make sure I sort of follow. So if we're putting out 3 lines, if we're putting out 4 lines, 3 lines, and staggering, you're putting a live eel or a live croaker on the bot. Like, I mean, people love specifics. I know they watch, listen to the podcast. So if I'm putting out 3 hooks and a chum slick up there at Oregon Inlet Way, tell me which one's on the bottom, which one's in the middle, which one's on the top, and what bait I got on each hook.
I would put the dead bait on the bottom, and then in that mid level is probably where I'd put my eel, and then we use one of those big orange floats. We'll take out 10, 15 feet of line and then snap it in and let that drift back. So again, that's where you have your dead bait on the bottom, and if you really wanted to, you could also put your live bait on the bottom. I usually hook it in the tail so it can swim, try to swim off more naturally. It seems like if you hook them in the lip, they just don't swim right, and don't have that natural action. Um, so that's usually what we do tiered level. But if we chum it, it's a dead bait definitely on the bottom. If you get in that mid level, you get a lot of bluefish and other species going after it, and you're going to deal with that chumming. But for gear that we use for that, we'll sometimes go down to an 8/0 hook, to even, depending upon the fish that we're seeing, go into a 6/0, because obviously you don't want a big huge hook in a small to medium sized spot or croaker or even an eel. You put too big of a hook, they're not going to swim right, or it's going to end up killing it. from just being in it. And we definitely use 80-pound leader on that as well. Usually about 2 feet to an egg sinker or to a three-way. And we normally get that down with an 8-ounce if we're using a three-way. If we're using an inline sinker or an egg weight, it would do 3 or 4 ounces just to get it down there. And the fish can still kind of, you can see that rod bouncing a little bit. And that's the chumming scene.
All right, man. Well, we are coming to the end of your podcast. I'm going to circle back to the sight casting. Man, from your vantage point, because it is getting more and more popular, a lot of new people entering the game. What are some of the biggest mistakes that newcomers to the pastime, newcomers to the pursuit make that you see and say, that is not helping you out at all?
Everybody's throwing it at the same time. That's it. Honestly, it's some people I've gone fishing with. Tell me it's your boat. You can tell me what to do. But if we see a fish, you can cast all you want. Please just let me keep the boat on it. And if that's not to their liking, that's totally fine. It's their boat. But you really end up catching a lot less fish if you don't have that one person driving the boat and the other person or people casting. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes. And then just not having patience. In that spring fishery, if you see some fish, there's more fish there. They migrate in big pods. They're fairly aggregated because there's also a time they start spawning. They actually spawn throughout the whole summer. So it's just not having the faith, seeing some fish and always thinking that there's more over the horizon or at the next spot or chasing phone calls. Kind of have your game plan, stick with it, especially if you're seeing fish. Because many a time, even me personally, I've fallen victim to it, is I'm seeing fish and we've had a tide change and they're not up. And it's like, well, they're seeing a couple down there. You run down there and then you get a phone call an hour and a half later that they're everywhere where you just left and it's too late in the day. So again, and the other thing I try to tell people is try to remember, what the weather was, what the wind was, where you were, what was going on as to why those fish may have been there. And it will help guide you, the following year or the next weather pattern. And it makes you a better fisherman all around because there's a lot of people that kind of think there's water, there should be fish there no matter what. And it's not the case at all. So that way you don't have angler disappointment of there should be fish here. And it's like, well, it's been blowing southwest and the water temperature's down to 58. They're not going to be here.
Well, man, I think I thought that was going to be my last question, but I actually thought of one more just while I was sitting there talking to you. I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm talking to a guy who spent a lot of time cobia fishing, been on the water. Tell me one of the more creative ways you've seen someone rig a tower on a boat, something that isn't supposed to be a tower, but they made it happen. And that was their tower that day. Give me one example of something that got your attention out there.
I tell you, I had good friends that used a step ladder and they showed some people up. So I have full respect for anybody's means or methods to go enjoy the cobia sightcast fishery. But seeing either old Granny's walker or one of those medical toilet seats as the source of the tower on the old Grady White with ratchet straps, and I'm pretty sure they had some bungee cords. But I tell you what, there's some days I wish I had that walker or toilet seat to sit down on instead of getting punched around and beat up inside a tower. But God bless them. just make sure that thing's strapped down real good, because it can get hairy. But I saw one thing online. I think it was just a joke. It was about a 20-foot John boat with a 15-foot ladder stand on it, and I didn't see anybody in it, so it may have been a little Photoshop. But I tell you what, if they use that for sight casting the flats, I want to meet them good old boys.
Hey, man, Boat Up Lures, online and in retail?
Online and retail. Down in the southern part of North Carolina, we're in the Seaview Pier. We're working up another order for Island Tackle. Chasing Tails is our what I call our mothership. They carry our largest stuff. We do their in-house jig heads, custom painted mirror lures for them. They carry our full line of trolling spoons. And the great people up here on the Outer Banks. We're about in every shop up here now. That's the one thing I'd like to let everybody know is, this started out on the kitchen table and on Avalon Fishing Pier, and it's truly been supported by the community through their support, through their suggestions, through their "that looks awful, don't make that again." So we've truly been blessed with the amount of support. We were up in Virginia as well, Oceans East, Bishops, Princess Anne. If I leave one out, I'll get in trouble. But we have a limited selection online. We really try to, promote that partnership with the tackle shops at the current time, because at the end of the day, they buy by the hundreds, and so far it's worked out fairly well. But we do have plans to expand our online base. But we usually put some stuff up. We'll have jig drops every now and then. If we're trying out a new lure, and we'll do giveaways, promos, just to keep the buzz going and getting them in people's hands and letting us know how they do. And that would be boatuplures.com. But we're also on Instagram, Facebook. I have TikTok, but I don't use it. That thing is pretty wild. But if you're using one of our lures, please, shoot us a message, and we'll love to post them up. I think this year we're going to start doing a monthly giveaway based on those who send us pictures in, and we love the kids' photos. Take a kid fishing. It's the future of this industry and outdoor recreation that is good for the soul.
Yeah, man. Bill, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, man. Glad we got together to talk Cobia. Glad we got together to talk Boat Up Lures. And, looking forward to crossing your path in person. Looking forward already to the next time.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, man. You have a good night.
You too.
Billy, are you wiser?
Yeah, dude. I'm super wise now. There's so much good information. I gotta go find your boat, get on your boat, Gary. You drive, I fish. That's what I took away from this was
All right.
you drive, I fish. That's the only thing I took away.
That's a deal, man. That's a deal. I'm not the selfish angler that we joke about, man. I'd be happy to put you on a big fish, man, on a modest fish, on a small fish. I'd be happy to. What's your best takeaway from Bill Gorham?
Yeah, man. So I always pay attention to these captains. If they say something more than once, I go, okay, I got to write that down because it's important. And it is, have somebody in control of the boat the whole time and not everyone casting. Just a person driving the boat, one or two people casting, you're going to catch more fish. He said it a couple of times. I wrote it down because I'm like, that's important to him. He's been doing this for a lot longer than anybody I know. So it's important. Now it's important to me. But I don't know how to drive a boat. So once again, I'm fishing. All right.
There you go, man.
Let everybody know. And then one more thing too, I thought was pretty cool that he mentioned, and I don't want it to just slip through the cracks, but when you're casting to these fish, to really cast that straight line and not bow it up, the line bow up. And so I thought that was a good takeaway there because, I'm typically the boat up line guy, so I can figure out how to line drive that thing to them. But yeah, man, those are my two things. Keeping control of the boat, and then when you do have a chance to cast it one, make sure you cast straight, not bow it out. So
Yeah, man. And that role assignment on the boat, that's a better conversation to have before you see a fish than after you see a fish. Because once you see the fish, logic and reason don't always rule the day. And so it's nice to have parameters in place before everything gets electric, man, before the
Yeah.
adrenaline is running, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's how I would have to control myself. I'd have to make a deal with myself before it happened. All right, this is your role, man. This is your role because you see that fish, and it is, as he was sort of alluding to in the beginning of the podcast, man, it is a love affair. It is a special fishery.
Yeah.
Hard fighting, sight casting, hunting on the surface, good eating. It checks all the boxes.
Yeah, man. So it's interesting, and that's a conversation that you do have to have. The first time I ever went on a boat offshore or near shore, rather, somebody had me out there fishing for bonita, and stuff's blowing up, and some guy I just met 20 minutes ago was like, grab the wheel, drive the boat. And I'm like, no, dude, this is like a 60,000 plus, probably way more than that, $1,000 boat. I'm like, I am not grabbing the wheel and doing anything. Like, no, I'm not even casting. Like, dude, these guys were wild and crazy. And I was like, holy crap, this is nuts. But yeah, no one had that conversation with me to say, hey, do you know how to drive a boat? Because you're probably gonna have to do that at some point. I'm like, no, no one did. So interesting. But yeah, man, that's a good show, Gary. Really appreciate it, and appreciate Bill there. I mean, great name, great dude, great company. So guys, go support him, and make sure you also support Marine Warehouse Center and Bland Landscaping Co. Super great sponsor of the show, supporting us here in 2022. So we really appreciate them coming back on for the season. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Like I say, Marine Warehouse Center, sales, parts, service, all of it, part of the fish and boating community. And again, I'm digging Bland Landscaping, their emphasis on attracting and keeping quality talent. I mean, for me, that's just a recipe for a company not only to work for, but to hire to take on whatever project you have, man. I love that relationship. I'm glad that they're looking to us to help them get the word out.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, Gary, we'll see you in the next one, man. Until then, good luck cobia fishing. Let me know if you catch one. Will we see a picture of Gary holding a cobia in one of our photos of the week? Maybe.
Hold on. I got one right here. Hold on.
Yeah, you get a wall of them. One that you actually caught on your own boat with your own tackle.
I got
How about that?
I got that.
Oh, yeah, right. Somebody get this guy out of here. I'm just messing. All right, we'll talk to you later, Gary.